if you don't have the culture right, and the starting points are really having leadership that's really tied into providing a good culture, psychological safety, really important, and support networks, empathic managers who actually care, then without that, people leave. They have bad experiences, they leave, and it's bad for businesses' bottom line, because you've got silent quitting, you've got people just not motivated to perform. And so it is, as I say, it's a kind of a virtuous circle, because you get this right, you get better business outcomes at the end. And it's down to the very close tie between resilience and between culture. A great culture will build a much more resilient business.
Welcome to this fireside chat with Jenny Segal, workplace culture expert and author of On Motivation, Personal and Professional Resilience. Hi, Jenny. Thanks for coming in.
Hi, Carmen. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So you talk a lot about how a business culture and a business performance are interlinked. And in particular, in your latest book, you talk about professional resilience and how it's a supported process, you say, rather than a personality trait. Can you explain that? And can you explain where culture meets performance?
Yes. Just as a bit of background, I carried out a big chunk of anthropological research. So I interviewed 45 people, and I was asking them, the basic question was, describe an incident, personal or professional, that's tested your resilience. And I think what really surprised me was when people had the whole range of stuff to talk about, how many of them talked about work as something which challenged their resilience. It was 38% of people. The resilience challenges were huge for them. So learning number one was that resilience is severely tested by work, and it's a total own goal, because we're then unable to be productive at work because of the workplace. So if we actually sort out the workplace problems that challenge the resilience, we'd actually get a better outcome for businesses as well. So there should be some kind of investment in there. So what is it that, so I talk about resilience is not, we think of it as something that is innate and something that you either have or you don't have. And if you don't have it, you better sort yourself out and buckle up and get on and become more resilient. But what I found, from the conversations I had, was that resilience is, you can get more of it, and I liken it to a muscle, and that if you're doing any kind of exercise to strengthen a muscle, you need a couple of things. First of all, your body needs the capacity to exercise, and you need to apply that exercise, that stress, targeted stress, to the muscle. And it's the same with resilience. So you need to be stressed to build resilience, but you also have to have the capacity to take it. And if you don't have the capacity, you're going to burn out, you're going to fall over. What was really interesting with the research that I did was I asked people to rank their resilience before their resilience trial, and I asked them to rank it after their resilience trial. And I found that for most people, their resilience increased. It went from a 6 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10. But for some people, for 18% of people, their resilience decreased. I thought that was really interesting. So why is that? If we think the resilience increases, the more stress that you have. And I think there's a couple of things, partly because maybe some of them didn't have the capacity to take that. So you imagine running, but your muscles haven't recovered, or you haven't had breakfast, you're probably not going to be able to finish the race. But the other part is that there seems to be a process that we have to work through to build our resilience. And I broke it down. There's the initial stage of the reaction, the initial reaction when you're dealing with the eye of the storm. And then there's the processing of it, and then there's the assimilating of it. And the amount of time it takes people to work through that 3-stage process varies hugely on the individual, on the environment that they're in. And some people actually never get there. They never actually deal with the stuff. It's almost like post-traumatic stress. You've never actually dealt with it. It's too painful, you bury it away. But once you have been through that, then you've got much more resilience. So the application of that to the workforce and to the comment about culture is that people need to have the time and the space to be able to do that, and you can speed it up by providing support networks. So if you have firstly, it's hugely important for workplaces to recognise this, because, as I say, culture is the fact that workplace trials are a major cause of resilience problems. If you sort it out, you'll get a more productive workplace. And you can actually speed the process up by providing support systems in a workplace and by getting the culture right.
And so why are we even talking about resilience? Well, you've already kind of alluded to it here. It does have a bearing on a business's performance, particularly long-term performance. How so?
So I think, again, it comes down to workplace culture. The main reason that people leave their workplace is because of their boss, but the behaviour of the boss is often driven by the culture of the organisation. And if you don't have the culture right, and the starting points are really having leadership that's really tied into providing a good culture, psychological safety, really important, and support networks, empathic managers who actually care, then without that, people leave. They have bad experiences, they leave, and it's bad for businesses' bottom line, because you've got silent quitting, you've got people just not motivated to perform. And so it is, as I say, it's a kind of a virtuous circle, because you get this right, you get the better business outcomes at the end, and it's down to the very close tie-off between resilience and between culture. A great culture will build a much more resilient business.
Looking at the kind of wider topic of culture and business performance, where are the other kind of crunch points, I guess, where a bad culture will really kind of have an effect on your business performance?
Yeah, so I think that bad culture it does come down to psychological safety. That when people have got problems at work, if they can't actually speak up and point out what the problem is, firstly, it's not just them that's going to silent quit, but you lose the feedback loop back into the business. And we do have some businesses that are set up where there's a shielding almost. You have a layer of middle management that's shielding from the decision makers what's actually happening in the business. So unless you've got that ability to know what the problems are on the ground, how can you actually solve for the long-term problems of the business? And that's where the psychological safety comes in. If people can't admit they've got personal problems or professional problems at work, then they're not going to get addressed. And there's this fear of how you're going to be perceived. And the thing is that there is a massive blurring between professional and personal resilience. If you want a business to be resilient, your individuals have to be resilient. And nobody has a perfect life. Stuff happens. The older you get, the more trials you have. We have health trials, we have relationship trials, we have any day of the week. You've got people in the office who are going through illness, who are going through divorce, who've got challenges from elderly parents or from children. This is the stuff of life. And to try and compartmentalise it, to some extent you can be successful, but then it's like a pressure cooker and you're putting a lid on stuff. And I think the old way of thinking was that people should just get on with it and be able to separate their personal and professional lives. But if we want people to be genuinely authentic at work, and we talk a lot about authenticity, and there's been a lot of studies showing that the sort of leadership that we want now, that people want now, particularly the new generations coming up, is authentic leadership where people can bring their true selves to work. We have to acknowledge that people have problems, and providing a support network is a really good way to do it.
I guess it might not always be obvious especially if maybe you don't have the most open work culture. You might, and you lose that feedback loop. It might not be obvious that there's an issue in the business. I mean, is there such a thing where you can feel as a business manager, business owner, that things are going swimmingly when actually underneath it's really starting to crack?
I think absolutely that's the case. And it is very interesting. It comes back to how do we reward people for success in businesses? And we tend to reward, particularly in financial services, we tend to reward people for very results driven, for bringing in new flows, for generating investment performance. And the way that we reward people is we promote them. And we promote them into management positions. We promote them because they've got great technical skills. They've been really good at their day job, rather than promoting them to be managers because they've got the skills to be great empathic managers. And that's what we want in our managers. That's what enables us to thrive. When we've got a great manager, we will go above and beyond our job. And that's good for the business, because motivated people produce more, they're more committed, they have the purpose that will drive better business results. And so you get this, because we're having people promoted into management leadership positions where they don't have the soft skills, and that's not recognised, and they're not paid to do it. They often have the player coach, and they're paid for their generating the results, the investment performance results, the sales through the door. They're not paid for, are you managing, motivating your team? We're not even very good at measuring that. But we tend to go back to this more old school approach of managers, which is managing by pressure, by applying pressure to people rather than allowing people to succeed. And the irony is that if you ask people what they want in a manager, everybody can remember their great managers. It's almost like your favourite teacher at school. And they stay with you for your whole life. And people also remember their bad managers and the impact it has on them. So we all know what we want, and actually what we want is our manager to be like a workplace teacher or a workplace parent, someone who will hold our hand when we're learning the job, but will let our hand go as we get more competent and be independent and be proud of our successes and let us soar and let us fly. So trying to get those kind of people in the roles means that the exec has to prioritise, has to recognise the value that good management leads to businesses. And it does lead to better performance and more resilience, because people will show up. You won't get the silent quitting, you'll get the good results.
Okay. Now, you've already kind of, I guess, alluded to many of these things. But if we take, most of our viewers will be financial advisors, business owners. If one of them sees this and thinks, okay, I recognise what you're saying. It makes sense to me. I would like to really make sure my business is the most kind of resilient, future-proofed business it can be. What should they start looking at in their business? Where do they start?
I think I'm going to say the C word again. I think you start with culture and a self-assessment, because the exec and the chief exec may think that they have a particular culture, but there's often a gap between the culture they think they have and the culture they actually have. And being really clear on what that is and why that is. So almost write down what you think your culture is and what the behaviours are that are congruent with that culture, and sit with it for a bit, a week, couple of weeks, and go back to it and see, is that actually what I do? Do I actually walk the floors? Do I have an open door policy? Are people clamming up when they see me at the coffee machine, or are they open about what's going on? If you need to have the means of accessing honest feedback loops to be able to work out what's going on. Toxic leadership is really common, and we need to have diverse views around the table to be able to capture that. Otherwise, you end up with tunnel vision. And in any organisation or any industry where there are big financial rewards for people, then that can misincentivize people so that they can prioritise their own performance because the rewards are so high rather than the team performance. Making sure that you've got the incentives right in place to enable good team behaviour, and think about, do you have a star culture, and what impact does that have on other people? Is your star player actually causing more problems than they're solving?
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thanks very much for coming in. Great chat as always.
Thanks, Carmen. It's been a pleasure.
And if you found it interesting, check out Jenny's book.
Okay.
On motivation, personal and professional resilience. And for more better business stories, visit ftadvisor.com. See you next time.